Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he arranged the display case for the third time that morning. The luxury watches gleamed under the bright lights of Chronos Elite, their polished surfaces reflecting the bustling streets of Neo-Tokyo outside. Flying cars zipped past the tall windows, their engines humming softly in the distance. It was 2387, and Earth had changed a lot since the old days. The store was nothing like the watch shops of ancient times. Along with traditional Earth timepieces, the shelves held strange and beautiful devices from other worlds. Some watches measured time in colors that shifted like rainbows. Others ticked to the rhythm of distant stars. The most expensive ones could even track time across different dimensions, though Jake did not fully understand how they worked. Jake had been working at Chronos Elite for only 2 months. The job was not easy, but the money was good if he could sell the expensive items. His boss, Lisa Park, had made it clear that his future at the store depended on his sales numbers. Every customer mattered, especially the wealthy ones who could afford the high-end pieces. The morning had been slow. A few alien tourists had browsed the cheaper sections, and one human businessman had bought a mid-range Earthwatch. But Jake needed bigger sales to meet his monthly target. He kept glancing at the temporal resonance collection in the back corner of the store. Those watches cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. If he could sell just one of those, his commission would be huge. The door chimed as another customer entered. Jake looked up from his cleaning cloth and saw a man in his 60s walking slowly through the entrance. The stranger had long, dark hair that fell past his shoulders and a neatly trimmed beard with streaks of gray. He wore faded blue jeans, old boots, and a brown leather jacket that had seen better days. His clothes looked like something from a history museum. Jake frowned. This man did not look like the usual customers who shopped at Chronos Elite. The wealthy humans who came here wore expensive suits and carried themselves with confidence. The alien dignitaries dressed in their finest ceremonial robes. This guy looked like he had wandered in from the street by mistake. The man moved quietly through the store, his eyes taking in everything around him. He stopped at different displays, studying the watches carefully. There was something calm about the way he moved, like he had all the time in the world. But Jake was not impressed. He had learned to spot serious buyers from window shoppers, and this man clearly belonged to the second group. After a few minutes, the stranger approached Jake's counter. Up close, Jake could see that the man's clothes were clean but worn. His face had lines that spoke of age and experience, but his dark eyes were kind and alert. There was something familiar about him, though Jake could not place what it was. "Good afternoon," the man said in a gentle voice. "I was hoping to look at some of your more exclusive pieces." Jake barely looked up from the inventory sheet he was pretending to read. "What kind of price range were you thinking about?" "I am not too concerned about the cost," the man replied. "I am looking for something special, perhaps something from your temporal resonance collection." Jake finally raised his head and really looked at the customer. The temporal resonance watches were the most expensive items in the store. Each one cost several million credits. The idea that this casually dressed man could afford such a purchase seemed ridiculous. "Those pieces are pretty pricey," Jake said, with a smirk. "Maybe you would be more interested in something from our basic collection over there." He pointed toward a display of cheaper watches near the front of the store. The man smiled patiently. "I understand they are expensive, but I am quite serious about making a purchase today. This is for a very important occasion." Jake sighed and set down his clipboard. He had dealt with dreamers before, people who came into luxury stores pretending they could afford things that were way beyond their means. It was a waste of his time, and time was money in the sales business. "Look, sir," Jake said, his voice taking on a condescending tone. "The temporal resonance collection starts at 5 million credits. These are serious pieces for serious collectors. Maybe you should try the store down the street. They have some nice watches that might be more in your budget range." The man's expression did not change. He remained calm and polite, which somehow made Jake even more annoyed. "I appreciate your concern about the price," the stranger said, "but I assure you cost is not an issue. I am actually looking to purchase several pieces as diplomatic gifts." "Diplomatic gifts?" Jake laughed out loud. Right. And I suppose you are some kind of ambassador or something? As a matter of fact, I am involved in diplomatic work, the man said quietly. Jake rolled his eyes. Everyone had a story. Everyone was more important than they looked. But Jake had learned not to believe sob stories from customers who could not afford to shop in his store. Across the store, Lisa Park was helping an alien customer select a chronometer. She glanced over at Jake's conversation but was too far away to hear what was being said. Jake noticed her looking and felt pressure to handle the situation quickly. He did not want his boss to think he was wasting time with non-buyers. "Look, buddy," Jake said, raising his voice slightly. "I do not know what game you are playing, but I do not have time for this. You clearly cannot afford anything in this store. Why do not you save us both some trouble and head somewhere more appropriate?" Other customers in the store began to notice the commotion. An alien diplomat with blue skin and elegant robes looked over with interest. A wealthy human couple shopping for anniversary gifts paused their conversation to watch. The man in the leather jacket remained perfectly calm. "I understand your skepticism," he said. "Perhaps if I could speak with the manager?" "I am handling this just fine," Jake snapped. "And what I am handling is asking you to leave. Security." Two security guards who had been standing near the entrance approached the counter. They were both human, dressed in neat uniforms with the Kronos Elite logo on their chests. "Is there a problem here?" asked the taller guard, a man named Pete Wilson. "Yeah, this guy is wasting my time and bothering other customers," Jake said. "He claims he wants to buy our most expensive watches, but look at him. He probably cannot even afford a cup of coffee." Pete looked at the stranger, taking in his casual appearance. Like Jake, he made quick judgments based on what he saw. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." The man nodded slowly. "I understand," he said with dignity. "I apologize for any disruption." As the security guards escorted him toward the door, the stranger turned back to look at Jake one more time. There was no anger in his eyes, no resentment, just a quiet sadness that made Jake feel uncomfortable for reasons he could not explain. "Have a good day," the man said softly, and then he was gone. Jake watched through the window as the stranger walked down the busy street and disappeared into the crowd. He felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. He had handled the situation like a professional, protecting the store from time wasters. But something about the man's calm reaction bothered him. From across the store, Lisa Park was staring at Jake with an expression of pure horror on her face. Her alien customer had left and she was walking quickly toward the counter with her communication device in her hand. "Jake," she said, her voice tight with panic, "please tell me you did not just throw out the customer I think you threw out." "What are you talking about?" Jake asked, though the knot in his stomach was growing larger. Lisa held up her device, showing a news article with a large photograph. The headline read, "Ambassador Keanu Nakamura departs for critical peace mission." The photo showed the same man Jake had just ejected from the store, but he was dressed in formal diplomatic robes and surrounded by government officials. Jake felt the blood drain from his face as he read the article. Keanu Nakamura was one of the most famous people in the solar system. He was humanity's chief ambassador to the Galactic Federation, a man who had negotiated peace treaties that saved millions of lives. He was also, according to the article, one of the wealthiest individuals on Earth. "Oh no," Jake whispered, staring at the photograph. "Oh no, no, no." Lisa was already making frantic calls, trying to reach the ambassador's office. But Jake knew it was too late. He had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. Jake stared at the photograph on Lisa's device, his hands beginning to shake. The man in the formal diplomatic robes looked exactly like the person he had just thrown out of the store. Same kind eyes, same gentle face, same long dark hair. But, in this picture, Keanu Nakamura was surrounded by important officials from different planets, all listening to him with great respect. "This cannot be real," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. "That guy was wearing old jeans and a beat-up jacket. He looked like a nobody." Lisa grabbed Jake by the shoulders, her face pale with panic. "You do not understand. Keanu Nakamura is famous for dressing simply. He never wears fancy clothes unless it is for official ceremonies. Everyone knows this about him. She quickly pulled up more news articles on her device. Headlines filled the screen. Earth's greatest diplomat saves
3 colonies from war.
Chen Nakamura brokers historic peace deal with Centauri Empire. The man who speaks for humanity across the stars. Jake read the articles with growing horror. Keanu Chen Nakamura was not just any diplomat. He was the most respected human in the entire galaxy. Alien species that had never trusted each other would sit down and listen when he spoke. He had prevented wars, saved entire civilizations, and built bridges between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Look at this, Lisa said, scrolling to another article. He owns major shares in Temporal Dynamics Corporation. That is the company that makes our most expensive watches. He probably has more money than anyone who has ever walked into this store. The store's artificial intelligence system, ARIA, suddenly spoke from the speakers around them. Her voice was calm but urgent. I have confirmed the identity match. The individual who was escorted from the premises is indeed Ambassador Keanu Chen Nakamura, cross-referencing recent news feeds and diplomatic schedules. More information appeared on the wall screens throughout the store. Jake watched in stunned silence as Arya displayed Keanu's incredible achievements. He had learned 17 different alien languages. He had studied the cultures and religions of dozens of different species. Some alien civilizations had actually created schools of philosophy based on his teachings about kindness and understanding. Arya, why did you not identify him when he entered? Lisa asked desperately. The ambassador's security profile requests minimal surveillance in civilian areas, Arya replied. He values privacy and normal interactions when not on official business. I was programmed to respect this preference. Jake felt sick to his stomach. He had treated one of the most important people in human history like a common troublemaker. Worse than that, he had been rude and dismissive to someone who was famous throughout the galaxy for his patience and kindness. What was he doing here? Jake asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Lisa was already making calls, trying to reach someone from the ambassador's office. After several attempts, she finally got through to his assistant, a woman named Carol Kim. Ms. Kim, this is Lisa Park from Kronos Elite, she said, putting the call on speaker. We had a terrible misunderstanding with Ambassador Chen Nakamura. Today, one of my employees did not recognize him and asked him to leave the store. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Carol finally spoke, her voice was cold and professional. I see. The ambassador did mention that his shopping trip was unsuccessful. Shopping trip? Lisa asked. What was he planning? To purchase? The ambassador was looking to buy the entire temporal resonance collection, Carol said. He needed them as diplomatic gifts for an extremely important mission. He is departing Earth tonight for peace negotiations in the disputed zones. Jake felt like the floor was falling out from under him. The entire temporal resonance collection was worth more than 50 million credits. His commission on that sale would have been enough to buy a house. But the money was not even the worst part. What kind of peace negotiations? Lisa asked, her voice tight with worry. Carol paused again. I probably should not discuss classified information, but given the circumstances, the ambassador is traveling to prevent a war between the Vorthan Collective and the Nexus Republic. If he fails, the conflict could spread across the entire sector. Millions of lives are at stake. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He had not just lost a sale or embarrassed his store. His prejudice and rudeness might have actually hurt the ambassador's chances of preventing a war. The gifts were supposed to be peace offerings, Carol continued. Each watch was specifically chosen to honor the cultural values of the alien leaders he will be meeting. Without these gifts, his job will be much more difficult. Lisa looked at Jake with a mixture of anger and despair. Is there any way we can still help? Can we deliver the watches to him before he leaves? The ambassador is already at the orbital station preparing for departure, Carol said. His ship launches in 4 hours. I am sorry, but there is no time. After the call ended, Lisa and Jake stood in silence. The other customers in the store had gone back to their shopping, unaware of the disaster that had just unfolded. The expensive watches continued to gleam in their cases, as if nothing had happened. "Do you understand what you have done?" Lisa asked quietly. "Keanu Nakamura has spent his entire life serving humanity. He has risked his safety countless times to protect our colonies and maintain peace with alien species. And when he came to our store for help with his most important mission, you threw him out like garbage." Jake could not speak. He was thinking about the ambassador's face when the security guards escorted him out. There had been no anger, no threats about getting revenge, just quiet dignity and sadness. Most people would have been furious. They would have demanded to speak to the manager or threatened to sue the store, but Keanu had simply accepted the treatment and left peacefully. "He is probably used to it," Jake said finally. "People probably judge him by his appearance all the time." "That makes it worse, not better," Lisa snapped. "He chooses to dress simply because he does not want people to treat him differently because of his fame or wealth. He wants to be seen as just another person. And you proved exactly why that is impossible." Arya's voice filled the store again. Additional information. Ambassador Chen Nakamura has made several previous purchases from Kronos Elite. He has always been described by staff as polite, patient, and generous. He once bought watches for an entire diplomatic delegation when their original gifts were lost in a transport accident. The artificial intelligence paused before continuing. He also has a standing order to donate any store discounts to charities that help war refugees. In the past 3 years, his purchases and donations through this store have funded medical supplies for over 10,000 displaced families. Jake sat down heavily in the chair behind the counter. Every new piece of information made him feel worse. Keanu Nakamura was not just famous or wealthy. He was a genuinely good person who had dedicated his life to helping others, and Jake had treated him with disrespect and suspicion. "What do I do now?" Jake asked, looking up at Lisa with desperate eyes. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the flying cars and busy streets of Neo-Tokyo. "I do not know," she said finally. "The ambassador is probably already gone. Even if we could reach him, why would he want to talk to us after what happened?" "There has to be something," Jake said. "Some way to make this right." "Maybe," Lisa said doubtfully. "But it would require you to do a lot more than just apologize. It would mean admitting you were completely wrong and finding a way to actually help him with his mission." Jake thought about the news articles he had read. The ambassador was traveling to a dangerous part of space to prevent a war that could kill millions of people. He was doing this without the diplomatic gifts that were supposed to help him succeed. All because Jake had been too proud and prejudiced to look past appearances. "I have to try," Jake said, standing up from his chair. "I have to find a way to fix this." Lisa looked at him with surprise. "What are you talking about?" "I am going to the orbital station," Jake said, his voice growing stronger with determination. "I am going to find Ambassador Chen Nakamura and figure out how to help him." "Jake, that is crazy," Lisa said. "You cannot just show up at a military facility and demand to see one of the most important diplomats in the galaxy." "Maybe not," Jake admitted. "But I have to try. I caused this problem, and I need to be the one to fix it." He looked around the store one more time, taking in the expensive watches and alien artifacts. Just a few hours ago, this job had seemed like the most important thing in his life. Now he realized there were much bigger things at stake in the universe. "I might not have this job when I get back," Jake said. Lisa studied his face for a moment, seeing something there she had not noticed before. "Maybe that would not be such a bad thing," she said softly. "Maybe you are meant for something more important than selling watches to rich people." Jake nodded and headed toward the door. He had no idea if his plan would work, but he knew he had to try. Ambassador Keanu Nakamura deserved better than the treatment he had received, and Jake was going to do everything in his power to make things right. Jake ran through the crowded streets of Neo-Tokyo, pushing past people and dodging flying delivery drones. He had never been to Orbital Station Alpha before, but he knew it was where all the important diplomatic ships launched from Earth. Getting there would not be easy or cheap. At the transport terminal, Jake stared at the departure board with growing panic. The next civilian shuttle to the orbital station would not leave for 3 hours. By then, Ambassador Chen Nakamura would already be gone on his peace mission. Jake needed to find another way. Emergency transport to Orbital Station Alpha, he said to the ticket agent, a bored-looking woman with purple hair. How much would that cost? She looked at him like he was crazy. Emergency civilian transport? That will be 15,000 credits, and you need special authorization. Jake's heart sank. He had some savings, but nowhere near that amount. He was about to give up when an idea struck him. His brother Danny worked for a cargo company that made regular runs to the orbital stations. Maybe he could help? Jake called, Danny's communication device praying his brother would answer. After several rings, Danny's face appeared on the small screen. Jake? What is wrong? You look terrible. Danny, I need your help, Jake said quickly. I need to get to Orbital Station, Alpha, as fast as possible. It is an emergency. Danny frowned. What kind of emergency? Are you in trouble? Jake explained the situation as quickly as he could. He told his brother about the ambassador, the mistake he had made, and the peace mission that might fail because of his prejudice. Danny listened with growing amazement. You threw out Keanu Chen Nakamura? Danny said, shaking his head. Jake, that guy is like a hero to half the galaxy. My alien co-workers at the cargo company practically worship him. I know that now, Jake said desperately. Can you help me get to the station or not? Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking. I have a cargo run scheduled to leave in 20 minutes. If you can get to the spaceport, I can take you along. But Jake, even if you reach the station, what makes you think the ambassador will want to see you? I do not know, Jake admitted, but I have to try. The trip to the spaceport took Jake almost all of his remaining money. He arrived just as Danny was finishing the pre-flight checks on his cargo ship, a small but reliable vessel called the Lucky Star. It was nothing like the sleek passenger shuttles, but it would get him to the orbital station. During the 2-hour flight, Jake used Danny's computer to learn more about Ambassador Chen Nakamura. What he discovered made him feel even worse about his behavior at the store. Keanu had been born over 400 years ago, back when Earth was still recovering from the old wars and environmental disasters. As a young man, he had been an actor in something called movies, but he had left that life behind to study philosophy and martial arts. When humanity first made contact with alien species, he had been one of the first people to learn their languages and customs. The more Jake read, the more amazed he became. Keanu had not just learned alien languages. He had mastered them so completely that some species preferred to negotiate with him rather than with their own diplomats. He had studied the history and culture of dozens of different worlds. He understood their religions, their art, their ways of thinking about family and honor and justice. Look at this, Jake said to Danny, pointing at an article on the screen. It says he once spent 3 years living with the Centauri monks to understand their spiritual practices. Then he used that knowledge to prevent a civil war that would have destroyed their entire civilization. Danny glanced over from the pilot's seat. The guy sounds like a saint, which makes what you did even worse. Jake kept reading. Another article described how Keanu had saved the human colony on New Terra by negotiating a trade agreement with the Vorthan Collective. The Vorthans had been suspicious of humans, but they had respected Keanu's knowledge of their culture and his sincere desire for peace. Here is something interesting, Jake said. It says that Keanu never travels with a big security team or fancy equipment. He believes that showing up with too much protection makes other species think you do not trust them. So he really was just trying to shop like a normal person, Danny said. Yeah, Jake replied, feeling the guilt twist in his stomach again. And I treated him like he was some kind of criminal. As they approached Orbital Station Alpha, Jake could see the massive structure floating in space above Earth. It was like a small city, with docking bays for hundreds of ships and living quarters for thousands of people. Somewhere in that huge station, the ambassador was preparing for the most important mission of his life. Danny docked the cargo ship and helped Jake navigate the station's security procedures. Getting permission to be there was complicated, but Danny's cargo credentials allowed them access to the civilian areas. The station was busier than Jake had expected. People from dozens of different species walked through the corridors, their various languages mixing into a constant buzz of conversation. He saw humans in business suits, aliens in colorful robes, and military personnel from several different planets. Jake made his way to the information desk, where a friendly robot directed him toward the diplomatic departure lounge. But when he arrived, 2 security guards blocked his path. "This area is restricted," said the first guard, a tall human woman with short blonde hair. "Do you have authorization?" "I need to speak with Ambassador Chen Nakamura," Jake said. "It is about his shopping trip to Kronos Elite today." The guards looked at each other with confusion. "Shopping trip?" the second guard asked. Jake tried to explain, but the guards were not interested in his story. They were about to escort him away when a woman in a diplomatic uniform approached. "I am Carol Kim, the ambassador's assistant," she said. "I believe we spoke on the phone earlier." Jake recognized her voice immediately. "Ms. Kim, please. I know. I made a terrible mistake today, but I want to help fix it somehow." Carol studied his face carefully. "You are the employee who asked the ambassador to leave your store?" "Yes," Jake said, feeling his face turn red with shame. "I know how it looks, but I came here to apologize and to see if there is anything I can do to help with his mission." "The ambassador is very busy preparing for departure," Carol said coldly. "I do not think he has time to meet with you." "Please," Jake begged. "Just 5 minutes. I know I do not deserve his time, but maybe I can help somehow." Carol looked at him for a long moment. Jake could see that she was trying to decide whether he was sincere or just looking for attention. "Wait here," she said finally. "I will ask the ambassador if he is willing to see you." Jake stood nervously in the corridor, watching the busy activity around him. Diplomats hurried past with important-looking documents. Military officers discussed security arrangements. Everyone seemed to have a purpose except him. After what felt like forever, Carol returned. "The ambassador will see you," she said with surprise in her voice. "He said something about everyone deserving a second chance." She led Jake through several security checkpoints and down a long corridor lined with offices. At the end of the hall, she stopped at a door marked with the Earth diplomatic seal. "He is preparing for the most dangerous mission of his career," Carol said quietly. "The Vorthon Collective and the Nexus Republic have been enemies for over 1,000 years. If this peace conference fails, the war could spread to dozens of star systems. Millions of people could die." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What was he planning to do with the watches from our store? "Each timepiece was chosen specifically for the leaders he will be meeting," Carol explained. "The Vorthons believe that time is sacred, and giving them a beautiful timepiece shows respect for their beliefs. The Nexus Republic values precision and craftsmanship, so the watches would demonstrate Earth's technological abilities." "And now he has to go without them," Jake said sadly. "Yes," Carol said, "but he is still determined to try. That is the kind of person he is." She opened the door to reveal a simple office with Earth and Federation flags on the walls. Behind a desk sat Ambassador Keanu Chen Nakamura, now dressed in formal diplomatic robes. Even in his official clothing, he had the same calm, kind expression that Jake remembered from the store. "Please sit down," Keanu said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I understand you wanted to speak with me." Jake sat down, not sure where to begin. The ambassador waited patiently, giving him time to find his words. "I came to apologize," Jake said finally. "What I did today was wrong. I judged you based on how you looked, and I treated you with disrespect. You did not deserve that." Keanu nodded slowly. "I appreciate your apology, but you did not travel all this way just to say you were sorry. What do you really want?" Jake took a deep breath. "I want to help you with your mission. I know I cannot undo what happened at the store, but maybe I can find another way to get you the gifts you need." The ambassador leaned back in his chair, studying Jake's face. "That is a generous offer, but I'm afraid it is too late. My ship launches in less than an hour." "Then take me with you," Jake said. the words coming out before he could stop them. I work in the luxury goods business. Maybe I can help you find alternative gifts during the journey. Keanu raised an eyebrow. You want to come with me to one of the most dangerous regions of space? Yes, Jake said, his voice growing stronger. The diplomatic ship Harmony's Edge was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The corridors were wide and peaceful, decorated with art from dozens of different worlds. Soft music from various alien cultures played quietly in the background. Everything was designed to make visitors feel welcome and comfortable no matter what species they were. Jake followed Ambassador Chen Nakamura through the ship, still amazed that he was actually here. The crew members they passed all bowed respectfully to the ambassador, but he greeted each one by name and asked about their families. Jake could see that these people did not just work for Keanu, they truly respected and cared about him. Your quarters are here, Keanu said, stopping at a small but comfortable room. We will be traveling for 3 weeks to reach the disputed zones. That will give us time to discuss your role in this mission. Jake set down his small bag and looked around the room. There was a bed, a desk, and a large window showing the stars outside. I still cannot believe you agreed to let me come. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right, Keanu said simply. Besides, I am curious to see what kind of person you really are when you are not judging others by their appearance. That evening, Jake joined the ambassador for dinner in his private quarters. The room was simple but elegant, with earth plants growing in small gardens and books from many different worlds lining the shelves. Keanu had changed out of his formal robes into comfortable clothes that looked much like what he had worn to the watch store. Tell me about yourself, Jake, Keanu said as they ate. What made you want to work in luxury sales? Jake felt embarrassed talking about his shallow motivations. I thought it would be easy money. Rich people buying expensive things they do not really need. I figured I could make a good living without working too hard. And now? Keanu asked. Now, I realize I do not know anything about the people I was selling to, Jake admitted. I never bothered to learn their stories or understand what the purchases meant to them. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. The watches you sell are not just objects. To the Vorthon Collective, a timepiece represents the sacred flow of existence. To the Nexus Republic, it shows respect for precision and order. Understanding these meanings is what makes a gift truly valuable. Over the next few days, Jake watched Keanu work and began to understand what real diplomacy looked like. The ambassador spent hours each day studying files about the alien leaders they would meet. He practiced speaking in their languages, reviewed their cultural customs, and learned about their personal histories and family traditions. Why do you work so hard to understand them? Jake asked one afternoon as they sat in the ship's library. Because peace is not just about stopping fights, Keanu explained. It is about building genuine understanding between different peoples. If I do not take the time to truly know and respect these leaders, how can I ask them to trust each other? Jake learned that the conflict between the Vorthon Collective and the Nexus Republic had been going on for centuries. Both sides claimed the same star systems, and both had good reasons for their claims. The Vorthons had lived in the region first, but the Nexus Republic had developed the technology that made the planets livable. Why do they want you to mediate instead of someone from their own species? Jake asked. Sometimes an outsider can see solutions that the people involved cannot, Keanu said. Also, both sides trust humans because we have a reputation for fairness. We do not take sides based on old grudges or ancient history. As they traveled deeper into space, Jake met other members of the diplomatic team. There was Dr. Maria Santos, a human expert on alien psychology. Commander Alex Turner led the small security team that would protect them during the negotiations. And there was Zephyr, a friendly alien from the Altarian Republic who served as a cultural advisor. The ambassador is taking a big risk bringing you, Zephyr told Jake one day. They were in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars go by. This mission is extremely dangerous. If the peace talks fail, the war could spread to our worlds too. Then why did he agree to let me come? Jake asked. Zephyr's 3 eyes blinked, and what Jake had learned was their species' version of a smile. Because that is who he is. Keanu believes that everyone can change and grow. He has seen it happen many times before. Jake was beginning to understand what made the ambassador so special. It was not just his intelligence or his knowledge of alien cultures. It was his genuine belief that people could become better than they were. On the 10th day of their journey, they encountered their first sign of the war. A group of refugee ships appeared on their sensors, fleeing from a battle in a nearby star system. Without hesitation, Keanu ordered their ship to stop and help. Jake watched in amazement as the ambassador coordinated rescue efforts. The refugees were from both sides of the conflict, Vorthon families and Nexus citizens who had been caught in the fighting. Many of them were injured and afraid. Keanu moved among the refugees, speaking to each group in their own language. He helped distribute medical supplies and food. Most importantly, he listened to their stories and treated each person with dignity and respect. "My family has been farming on Vorthon Prime for 6 generations," an elderly Vorthon woman told him, tears in her large blue eyes. "Now our home is gone, destroyed by Nexus bombs. The Vorthons attacked our research station without warning," said a young Nexus scientist, his green skin pale with exhaustion. 30 of my colleagues died. They were just studying plants, not making weapons." Jake realized that both sides had suffered terrible losses. Both had good reasons to be angry and want revenge. Making peace between them would be incredibly difficult. After they had helped the refugees reach safety, Jake found Keanu standing alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "How do you do it?" Jake asked. "How do you stay hopeful when you see so much suffering?" "Because the alternative is to give up," Keanu said quietly. "And giving up means more families will lose their homes, more children will lose their parents, more dreams will be destroyed by violence." Jake thought about his own life and how small his problems seemed compared to what the refugees were facing. "I have been so focused on making money that I forgot about what really matters." "What do you think really matters?" Keanu asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Taking care of each other, treating people with respect, using whatever talents we have to help instead of just helping ourselves. Keanu smiled. "You are learning." As they continued their journey toward the war zone, Jake helped the ambassador research possible alternative gifts for the peace negotiations. They studied the cargo manifests of trading ships, looking for items that might have cultural significance to the Vorthon and Nexus leaders. "What about these crystal formations from the Andorian mines?" Jake suggested, pointing to a listing on his tablet. "The report says they are extremely rare and beautiful." Keanu examined the information carefully. "Interesting. The Vorthons believe that crystals hold spiritual energy. If we could find some that resonate at frequencies sacred to their culture, they might work as peace offerings." Jake felt excited to be actually helping instead of just watching. "And for the Nexus Republic?" "They value technological innovation," Keanu said. "Perhaps we could find some ancient artifacts that demonstrate advanced engineering, something that shows respect for their achievements while also representing Earth's commitment to progress." Over the following days, Jake threw himself into the research with new energy. He contacted trading posts and merchant ships along their route looking for items that could serve as diplomatic gifts. For the first time in his life, he was using his sales skills for something more important than making money. "You have a real talent for this," Dr. Santos told him as they worked together in the ship's communication center. "You understand what motivates people to make purchases. That is exactly what diplomacy is about, figuring out what people really want and finding ways to give it to them." As the Harmony's edge approached the disputed zones, Jake could feel the tension on the ship increasing. They were entering one of the most dangerous regions of space where two powerful civilizations were preparing for all-out war. But Jake also felt something he had never experienced before. He felt like he was part of something important, something bigger than himself. Whether the peace mission succeeded or failed, he knew that being here with Ambassador Chen Nakamura was changing him into a better person. "Are you nervous?" Keanu asked him on their last night before reaching the war zone. "Terrified," Jake admitted, "but also grateful. Thank you for giving me this chance." "Thank you for taking it," Keanu replied. "Not everyone would have been brave enough to leave their comfortable life to try to fix their mistakes." Jake looked out at the stars ahead of them, knowing that somewhere in that darkness, the future of millions of people would soon be decided. He did not know if they would succeed, but he knew he would do everything in his power to help make peace possible. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The neutral space station where the peace talks would take place looked like a massive metal flower floating in the darkness. Harmony Station had been built specifically for diplomatic meetings between different species. It had no weapons and belonged to no government. Here, even the worst enemies could meet safely to try to solve their problems with words instead of violence. Jake pressed his face against the window of the Harmony's edge as they approached the docking bay. He could see other ships already attached to the station, sleek Vorthan vessels that looked like they were made of flowing water, and angular Nexus Republic ships that reminded him of giant metal crystals. Both delegations are already here, Commander Turner reported to Ambassador Chen Nakamura. The Vorthan High Chancellor Lyra Moonwhisper arrived yesterday. The Nexus Supreme Director Zane Steelwright came this morning. Jake had spent the last week learning about these two leaders. Chancellor Moonwhisper was over 300 years old and was known for her wisdom and her fierce protection of Vorthan traditions. Director Steelwright was younger, but had a reputation as a brilliant strategist who never backed down from a fight. Any signs of trouble? Keanu asked. The two delegations refused to stay on the same level of the station, Dr. Santos said, reading from her tablet. The Vorthans are using the meditation chambers on the upper levels. The Nexus group has taken over the technology labs on the lower decks. They cannot even agree to breathe the same air, Jake said with worry. That is why we are here, Keanu replied calmly. Someone has to build the first bridge between them. As they docked with the station, Jake felt his stomach twist with nervousness. During their journey, he and the ambassador had managed to collect several potential gifts through trading with merchant ships. They had beautiful crystals from the Andorian mines, ancient technological artifacts from a defunct civilization, and rare art pieces from various worlds. But Jake still worried it would not be enough. The station's interior was designed to be peaceful and welcoming. Soft lights changed colors slowly, and the walls were covered with artwork from hundreds of different species. The air smelled like flowers from a dozen different worlds. Everything was meant to help visitors feel calm and open to compromise, but the tension was obvious as soon as they stepped off their ship. Vorthan guards in flowing blue robes stood at one end of the docking bay, while Nexus security officers in silver armor watched from the other end. Neither group looked at the other, but Jake could feel the hostility between them. Neutral ground means everyone has equal rights here, Keanu reminded his team as they gathered their luggage. We treat both sides with exactly the same respect. The station's administrator, a friendly alien named Coordinator Flux, greeted them at the entrance. Flux belonged to a species that looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. Ambassador Chen Nakamura, welcome to Harmony Station, Flux said in a voice that sounded like wind through branches. I must warn you, both delegations are in very bad moods. There was an incident yesterday. What kind of incident? Dr. Santos asked. A Nexus junior diplomat accidentally bumped into a Vorthan cultural advisor in the corridor. The Vorthan accused him of disrespect. The Nexus claimed it was an attack. Both sides are now demanding apologies that the other refuses to give. Jake shook his head in disbelief. They are ready to start a war over someone bumping into someone else? When people are already angry and afraid, small things become big problems, Keanu explained. Our job is to help them see past their fear and remember what they really want. Their first official meeting was scheduled for the next morning, but Keanu wanted to meet with each delegation separately first. He asked Jake to come with him to both meetings, saying that having a neutral observer might help him notice things he might miss. The Vorthan delegation had set up their temporary headquarters in the station's meditation gardens. The space was filled with flowing water, soft music, and plants from their homeworld. Chancellor Lyra Moonwhisper sat in the center of the room, surrounded by her advisors. She was tall and graceful, with silver hair that seemed to move like liquid and large violet eyes that looked ancient and wise. Ambassador Chen Nakamura, she said as they entered, her voice musical but cold. I hope you bring better news than the last mediator we spoke with. I bring hope, Keanu replied, bowing in the traditional Vorthon way, and respect for your people's long struggle to protect your ancestral homes. Jake watched as the ambassador spoke with the Vorthons in their own language. He could not understand the words, but he could see how Chancellor Moonwhisper's expression gradually softened. Keanu asked about their families, their traditions, and their hopes for the future. He listened carefully to their complaints about the Nexus Republic and acknowledged their pain without taking sides. When it came time to present gifts, Jake helped Keanu unwrap the crystals they had obtained during their journey. The Vorthans gasped with delight when they saw the beautiful blue formations that seemed to glow with inner light. These crystals resonate at the harmonic frequency sacred to the Song of Creation, Keanu explained. They come from Earth's ally, worlds as a symbol of our respect for Vorthon spiritual wisdom. Chancellor Moonwhisper touched one of the crystals gently, and her eyes filled with tears. These are magnificent. It has been many years since anyone outside our people showed such understanding of our beliefs. The meeting with the Nexus delegation was very different. They had taken over a high-tech conference room filled with holographic displays and data streams. Director Zane Steelwright was a tall, imposing figure with metallic implants that enhanced his natural abilities. His silver hair was cut short, and his gray eyes were sharp and calculating. "Ambassador," he said without getting up from his chair, "I hope you are here to convince the Vorthons to be reasonable. We have offered them fair compensation for the disputed territories, but they refuse to discuss practical solutions." Keanu remained patient and respectful. "I am here to listen to all sides and help find a path forward that honors everyone's needs." Jake noticed that the Nexus delegation seemed more organized but also more rigid than the Vorthons. They had charts and graphs showing their claims to the disputed star systems. They spoke in precise technical language and seemed frustrated by what they saw as Vorthon emotionalism. When Keanu presented the ancient technological artifacts they had collected, Director Steelwright and his advisors examined them with great interest. "These are remarkable examples of precision engineering," the director admitted. "The mathematical principles behind their construction are quite sophisticated. They represent Earth's appreciation for Nexus achievements in science and technology," Keanu said. "Your people's innovations have improved life throughout the galaxy." After both meetings, Jake felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. How can you possibly get them to agree on anything? They see the universe in completely different ways. "That is exactly why they need each other," Keanu said as they walked through the station's corridors. "The Vorthons understand harmony and spiritual balance. The Nexus Republic excels at practical problem solving. Together they could build something amazing. But they hate each other. They fear each other," Keanu corrected. "Fear makes people forget that their differences can be strengths instead of weaknesses." That evening, Jake helped the ambassador prepare for the main negotiation session. They reviewed cultural protocols, studied maps of the disputed territories, and practiced different scenarios that might come up during the talks. "What if they just refuse to compromise?" Jake asked. "Then people die," Keanu said simply. "Families lose their homes. Children grow up in a universe filled with violence instead of cooperation. That is what we are here to prevent," Jake thought. About the refugees they had helped during their journey. He remembered the old Vorthon woman who had lost her family farm, and the young Nexus scientist whose colleagues had been killed. Both sides had already suffered so much. "I want to help more," Jake said. "Is there anything else I can do?" Keanu smiled at him. "You are already helping more than you know. Your presence here proves that people can change, that mistakes can be corrected, and that redemption is possible. Those are the same things I am trying to convince the Vorthons and Nexus to believe about each other." As Jake prepared for sleep that night, he looked out the window at the stars surrounding Harmony Station. Somewhere out there, two civilizations were preparing for a war that could destroy millions of lives. Tomorrow, everything would depend on whether Ambassador Chen Nakamura could help ancient enemies see past their fear and anger. Jake had come on this mission to make up for his own mistake, but now he realized something bigger was at stake. This was not just about preventing a war between aliens. It was about proving that understanding and compassion could triumph over prejudice and hatred. It was about showing that people from different backgrounds could work together instead of destroying each other. The peace talks would begin in just a few hours. Jake fell asleep wondering if he would be able to help make a difference, or if he would watch helplessly as everything fell apart. The main negotiation chamber at Harmony Station was designed like a circle, with no head table or preferred seating. Ambassador Chen Nakamura sat at one point of the circle, while Chancellor Lyra Moonwhisper and Director Zane Steelwright sat across from each other, their delegations arranged behind them. Jake sat quietly in the observer section, his heart pounding with nervousness. The first day of talks did not go well. Both sides presented their claims to the disputed star systems, but neither was willing to listen to the other. The Vorthons spoke about their ancient spiritual connection to the planets they had first discovered. The Nexus Republic showed detailed charts proving how their technology had made those same worlds livable for millions of people. "We have sacred sites on those planets that date back over 2,000 years, Chancellor Moonwhisper said, her musical voice filled with emotion. "You cannot put a price on our spiritual heritage. And we have invested billions of credits and decades of work to build cities and farms there," Director Steelwright replied coldly. "You cannot simply ignore economic reality because of old superstitions." Jake could see both sides getting angrier as the day went on. The Vorthons felt insulted when the Nexus delegation called their beliefs superstitions. The Nexus representatives grew frustrated when the Vorthons refused to discuss practical compromises. By the end of the first day, both delegations were threatening to leave. Jake watched Keanu working late into the night, making private calls to leaders on both sides, trying to convince them to stay and keep talking. The second day was even worse. A Nexus advisor accused the Vorthons of being backward and refusing to accept progress. A Vorthon cultural expert responded by calling the Nexus people soulless machines who only cared about money. Within minutes, both sides were on their feet, shouting at each other in different languages. "Enough," Keanu said, his normally calm voice carrying such authority that everyone fell silent. "We are here to build peace, not to rehearse old insults. If you cannot speak with respect, we should all go home and let the war decide everything." The room remained tense and quiet. Jake could see that the ambassador was struggling to find a way forward. These two civilizations had been enemies for so long that they had forgotten how to see each other as people instead of threats. On the third day, everything nearly fell apart completely. News arrived that fighting had broken out again in one of the disputed systems. A Nexus supply convoy had been attacked by Vorthon raiders. Dozens of people were dead on both sides. Director Steelwright stood up angrily. "This proves that the Vorthons cannot be trusted. They attack our peaceful traders while pretending to negotiate for peace." "Those were not official forces," Chancellor Moonwhisper protested. "Some of our people are angry because Nexus soldiers destroyed their villages last month. Violence creates more violence." "Then maybe violence is the only language you understand," the director shot back. The room erupted in angry voices. Delegates from both sides began gathering their papers, preparing to leave. Jake realized that the peace talks were about to collapse, and with them, any hope of preventing a galactic war. That was when something unexpected happened. Jake found himself standing up from his seat in the observer section. He did not plan it or think about it. He just knew that he had to try to help. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. Most of them had forgotten he was even there. "Who is this person?" Director Steelwright demanded. "My name is Jake Miller," he said, walking slowly toward the center of the circle. "I am nobody important. I work in a watch store back on Earth. But I came here because I made a terrible mistake, and I wanted to try to fix it." The room was completely quiet now. Even Keanu looked surprised to see Jake speaking. 3 weeks ago, Ambassador Chen Nakamura came to my store," Jake continued. "He was dressed in simple clothes, and I judged him by his appearance. I treated him with disrespect and had him thrown out. I thought he was just some poor person who did not belong in my expensive store." Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. I brought something with me today. It is not valuable like the beautiful gifts the ambassador has given you. It is just a simple watch that belonged to my grandfather. He unwrapped the package to reveal an old earth timepiece with a worn leather band. The watch was nothing special, just a basic model that had been made decades ago. But it was clean and well-maintained, and it still kept perfect time. My grandfather gave me this watch when I started working, Jake said, holding it up for everyone to see. He told me that time is the most precious thing we have because we can never get it back once it is gone. He said that how we choose to spend our time shows who we really are. Jake looked around the circle at the alien faces watching him. I wasted years of my time judging people by how they looked instead of getting to know who they really were. I almost wasted the ambassador's time when he needed help with the most important mission of his life. And now all of you are wasting precious time fighting about the past instead of building a future. He placed the watch in the center of the circle. I do not know much about diplomacy or politics, but I know about making mistakes and trying to fix them. And I know that sometimes the smallest gesture can mean more than the biggest gift. Chancellor Moonwhisper leaned forward, studying the simple watch. This timepiece has great meaning for you? It reminds me to use my time wisely, Jake said. To treat people with respect. To remember that everyone has value, even if they look different from me. Director Steelwright picked up the watch and examined it carefully. The craftsmanship is quite good for such an old design. Simple but reliable. That is exactly what my grandfather was like, Jake said with a small smile. Simple but reliable. He taught me that trust has to start somewhere, with someone willing to take the first step. There was a long silence in the room. Jake could feel his heart beating as he waited to see what would happen next. Finally, Chancellor Moonwhisper spoke. This young human has shown us something important. He traveled across the galaxy to apologize for a moment of prejudice. If he can find the courage to admit his mistakes and try to change, perhaps we can do the same. Director Steelwright nodded slowly. The watch represents something we both value, the importance of time and the skill to create something that lasts. Perhaps that is where we should start looking for common ground. Over the next 3 days, something remarkable happened. Using Jake's watch as a symbol of new beginnings, the two delegations began to really listen to each other for the first time. They shared stories about their families, their cultures, and their dreams for the future. The Vorthans learned that many Nexus citizens genuinely respected alien cultures and wanted to work together peacefully. The Nexus delegation discovered that Vorthon spiritual practices actually included sophisticated environmental science that could help protect the disputed planets. Ambassador Chen Nakamura guided the discussions with patience and wisdom, helping both sides find creative solutions to problems that had seemed impossible to solve. They agreed to share control of the disputed systems, with the Vorthans protecting the spiritual sites while the Nexus Republic managed the cities and trade routes. When the peace treaty was finally signed, Jake felt tears in his eyes. He had come on this mission to make up for his own mistake, but he had ended up being part of something much bigger and more important. "Thank you," Keanu said to him, as they prepared to leave Harmony Station. "Your contribution made all the difference." "I just told them about my grandfather's watch," Jake said. "You did much more than that," the ambassador replied. "You showed them that change is possible, that people can grow beyond their prejudices, that redemption exists for anyone brave enough to seek it." 6 months later, Jake was working at a small diplomatic office on New Geneva, one of the frontier worlds where humans and aliens live together peacefully. He had left the luxury watch business to study interspecies relations under Keanu's guidance. His job now was to help new human settlers understand and respect the cultures of their alien neighbors. When people visited his office, Jake greeted everyone with the same respect and kindness, no matter how they looked or dressed. He had learned that you never knew when you might be in the presence of someone extraordinary. On his desk sat his grandfather's watch, keeping perfect time and reminding him every day to use his hours wisely. It was a simple timepiece with a simple message, that time spent helping others was never time wasted. And sometimes, when he looked up at the stars through his office window, Jake remembered the moment when a humble watch had helped bring peace to the galaxy. It reminded him that even the smallest acts of courage and kindness could change the universe in ways no one could predict.